You are listening to Simplified, the Power of Small Changes podcast by Center for Intrinsic Motivation. On this show, we will be discovering the power of behavior change. Every month, Simplified will bring insightful ideas and practical advices to help you bring about long-term change in education system through small steps.
Welcome everyone to the third episode of Simplified. Today, we are excited to have Rezi join us to discuss the importance of classroom observation. Rezi leads the design of programs at Stir Education in Indonesia. She brings a wealth of experience and insight to this topic. In this episode, Rezi will delve into the why, what, and how of classroom observations. Welcome, Rezi.
Hi, Survi. Nice to be here.
So, Rezi, could you help our listeners understand the core idea behind classroom observations?
So Survi, I used to be a teacher, so I still remember the mix of excitement and sheer panic, as a teacher when someone told me they're coming to my class. And I think these feelings, like many can relate. Um, but I think feedback from those classroom observations really shaped my practice. So fast forward to my current role, when I observe principals observing their teachers, I often hear them say things like, it was a good lesson, thank you for that, and that's it. So I thought I wanted to share some insights on how school leaders can use classroom observations to truly support teachers' professional growth.
Interesting. So glad to hear that you've benefited from classroom observations. I think many listeners would be able to relate to this experience. Picking up from your idea about teachers' professional growth, Resi, for classroom observation, could you elaborate more on the importance of engaging in classroom observations for teachers?
Yeah. So I feel that when schools invest in professional development and teachers really apply what they learn and reflect on it, real changes happen in the classroom. But it's not only on the teachers. Principals or the school leaders play a very important role too. They set the tone, they create the supportive environment for observations, or even like encourage peer learning where teachers can observe each other and pick up new ideas. So to say that it's all about building a culture of improvement together.
Thanks, Rezi. So, how do you think schools can create an enabling environment for classroom observations to support this culture of improvement?
Good question, Siri. Well, I've seen some great ways of how school leaders or school principals can do it. So one of the examples is that they make it a habit to do brief visits, like before formal observations. They don't give they don't give like formal feedback or criticisms during these visits. So they focus on building the caring atmosphere and positive experience for the teachers. And also, another example is that they facilitate open discussions about the importance of observations, maybe in the school meetings kind of thing. So I think focusing on the why really helps everyone understand the purpose behind classroom observations. And I think that's a great way, to get everyone on board.
Yeah, focusing on the true purpose is so important. Rezi, now that you've built an interesting context around classroom observations, could you help our listeners with some strategies and techniques to conduct impactful classroom observations?
Okay, I'll try, but I think our listeners will have to try this and see if this works or not. And I'll be happy to listen from their experience as well. So I think the one of the most important things is to collect evidence. So as observers, always take notes on the specific observations in the classroom. So it can help you give meaningful feedback. For example, instead of saying like, oh, the teacher explanation is clear, so you can focus on the statements that the teacher made and how students responded. So this way, your feedback is grounded in concrete evidence. So that's one. Another thing that I can think of is for the observer to understand the cultural nuances. So I think we can relate, like even in Indonesia, and I think in the most Asian countries, like many people prefer indirect feedback, to avoid confrontation. So when giving feedback, we have to be gentle and also tactful. I think a lot of um, people will refer to sandwich method. You start with a compliment and then criticism, and then you end on a positive note. I see that it can be effective, but I have to remind as well, maybe like if someone catches on this pattern, they may start ignoring the compliments and only focus on the criticism. So um, one of the way to you know you might want to just elicit some reflection first from the teachers that you observe, and then have a conversation with them. So, and I think it leads also to the ability for cognitive coaching. So that's my third point. um, you might in those conversations during the post classroom observation feedback, you might want to use like prompts to encourage deep reflection on teaching practice. So instead of asking questions like, do you agree? Did you finish the lesson? Try asking like, how does your classroom management technique relate to student engagement, for example? Or what specific steps can you take to improve? So I think these questions facilitate more thoughtful discussion and insights. So yeah, I think those are the three things that I can share, Surbi. And really like my call to action to people who ever listening to this podcast is get those observations on the calendar. I mean, it opens up opportunities for feedback and collaboration.
Thank you, Rezi, for sharing those insights around classroom observations. I think these are excellent tips and will truly help our listeners. So, there you are, dear listeners, with these strategies from Rezi. Let us try and calendarize those classroom observation with our peers and unpack its power for improving our teaching learning practice and eventually student learning. Thank you so much, Rezi, for joining us today.
Thanks, Surbi.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Simplified. Remember, small steps can lead to big changes. To stay tuned for future episodes packed with new ideas and inspiring stories, hit the subscribe button.